It's the Locked On Flyers podcast here with your quick reaction to the Flyers' fifth overall pick in the NHL Draft, Cutter Gauthier.
Interesting.
We'll talk about it coming up next.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with prospect expert Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. We're on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can also email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. We've got all the best NHL draft and free agency coverage this offseason, so subscribe wherever you are listening here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Russ, the thing happened that we maybe didn't want to happen, but we can live with, and that is them selecting Cutter Gauthier. We talked about him a lot way back in January, so if you want to hear more about him, check out the January 28th episode of Locked On Flyers. We know, obviously, he's a center slash winger, a slightly bigger guy, 6'3", and he plays for the U.S. national team development program right now, but is a Boston College commit for next fall. He's been on the U18 team for USA Hockey, and I think that he's one of these guys that on that U18 team had a really good tournament, but has kind of been somewhat overlooked. And I think he's just kind of getting propped up a little bit right now as far as his rankings amongst the guys on that USNTDP team.
Yeah, I think, there was a point, and I think it probably was in January where I had an exclusive with him, and he was trying to sell me on the center position, which is fine. I'd seen him play center. Uh, you'd really have to go out there and catch the NTDP games to do that, and I was lucky enough to do that. He certainly could play the position. The issue I have is, will he be good enough defensively? The word is on faceoffs, people think that, people smarter than me that, he'll get that. So that's fine. He was already pretty good this year anyhow, so it's not like he's bad on faceoffs. But the defensive part is a little worry. And then the other thing is, I always feel like you'll see one or two amazing plays out of him a game, and I'd like to see a little bit more than that. When you talk about the U18s, he had a really good one. He was more than a point a game, but 3 goals. You'd like to see a few more goals maybe to be a little more dominant with that. But again, you're on like an all-star team. It's hard. Um, I get that. I like his skating. He does have a physical nature. He's not going to use it every shift, but he, as the year went on for him, he did utilize getting to the net more. And I think that's something where at the NHL level, he's definitely going to have to do that. And he's got a great shot. He's got one of the best wrist shots in the draft, and he's going to have a great one at the pros.
Yeah, one thing, if you look at his numbers, and you mentioned he's a physical player, which can be good, but he does have a lot of penalty minutes
Oh, yeah.
under his belt. And I just wonder if that's, that physicality, as much as he uses it, is going to be a problem in some ways.
I don't think it's going to be. I feel like his hockey IQ is pretty good, so I don't think that that's going to be a
Hmm.
main issue. But you never know. Like, sometimes when you get to a certain level, maybe, he is challenged a little bit more, and maybe he loses his cool a little more. Maybe that is something that's, he's going to have to learn. But I haven't seen enough of it where I would say it's an issue. But, one of the things he does is forearm curls, and that's to make sure he's got like the strongest shot. He puts in the work. This guy puts in the work at the shooting room for the NTDP, and he also puts in the work at home. Like, he'll shoot at
Yes.
home. And so, half the battle is with players is coaches always like to hear that the player is willing to put in the work, because the coach wants to pile on the work and wants to get that player better quicker. Like, that's just the nature of the game. So he is one of those guys that's willing to do it.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's why, while it's maybe not the first choice I would have had for a pick, I don't think it's a bad pick overall. And I
No.
don't think the Flyers are getting like a bad player in him. I think that Cutter has a lot of potential here. And like you said, he does work really hard and his numbers are pretty good where he is now. He just like I think he needs a little bit more time to grow and
Hmm.
work on some of those things than maybe some other guys. So but from your perspective, what is his path to the NHL?
So his path is, if he makes it at center, would be a second line center. Where if he's a winger, if he's a left wing, uh, could be first line, definitely second line. But I think there's a chance he could be a first line left wing, especially if he continues to get stronger. His play off the wall is pretty good. He's aware of it.
Mhm.
He does a good job with that, and that's why I feel like he's more set up as a winger. Because again, it's hard sometimes for defense to cover a faster guy off the wall than it is like every center is kind of fast, right? There's not many slow centers in
Right.
hockey, but the fast guy off the wall, especially with some size, can really give a defense some trouble and have him off balance. So I feel like that's more of his path. And yeah, he's going to be a handful. He's got a really good one timer. He's got an amazing wrist shot. He's a guy that can take the puck up the ice and do some things with it. When he's got the puck on his stick, he can make a great play. He's certainly an adept passer. So, this is a really good offensive talent. I don't know if he's going to live up to some of these expectations that people have for him, but I think he's certainly capable of scoring like 55 points, maybe 60 a year. I think that's a reasonable outlook for him, and I think that's what I'd be looking for.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I'm excited about as far as his development goes is the fact that he is playing at Boston College. I think it's,
Yes.
a top tier program, and we all know that NCAA hockey is a great training ground for NHLers, and it's becoming so more and more every year. And I think it gives him the room to have some options where, if he plays for 2 years there and thinks he's ready and the Flyers thinks he's ready, he can make the move over to the AHL at that point, but he has time to make that decision and then start playing against older and older guys, at the NCAA level, and I think that does a little bit of extra to prepare these kids for the NHL and get them in a system where discipline is really important, teamwork is really important, and I think that for him that's exactly what I want to see, and I do have confidence that he's going to make it, and it's going to be a good option for the Flyers. I just think that again, maybe I would have picked somebody different, but this is who we got, and I am excited to see what the future looks like for Cutter Gauthier.
Yeah, I mean, NCAA players can work out in season because they don't play a ton of games. He's used to playing against college teams from the NTDP. They do play against some colleges, so that's
Mhm.
something where he's used to that. He's not going to be on an all-star team though, where his other line mates are like guys that'll be first-round picks somewhere else. So he's going to have to be a little bit more of the man, and that could be an adjustment with him playing at center. So I wouldn't look for him to break in as a top line center for Boston College. You may be talking about second or third line to start.
Right. And that's where I'd look more toward his second year to see where the
Yes.
progression is and see where he slots in there. But I think he's got a lot of good hockey ahead of him, and I'm excited to see him in the orange and black.
Yep. Me too.
All right, we will have more on the Flyers NHL draft coming up on tomorrow's show, so stay tuned for that. We'll also have a big overall draft wrap up on Monday's show. Thanks again for listening and have a great rest of your NHL draft weekend.